You've already been photographed today. Maybe it was a friend, maybe a stranger, maybe the camera in your pocket. But what if I told you, every single photo you've ever taken holds more than your image? What if it holds your death? Picture this: a single gas lamp flickering against stone walls, a shadowed figure hunched over a wooden tripod. It's the winter of 1902 in a forgotten Scottish village, and Alistair McCairn, a reclusive photographer no one truly trusts, is about to take a picture that will shatter reality itself. McCairn was known for memorial portraits, photographing the recently deceased as if they were still alive, a morbid Victorian custom. But one bitter night, a grieving mother carried her lifeless daughter into his studio. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Alistair's hands shook as he prepared the glass plate, positioning the small body in a chair. He took the shot. The shutter clicked. When the negative developed, the mother fainted. There was something standing behind the girl, a figure, thin, unnatural, its hand resting on her shoulder. It was no one from the room. It was no one living. From that night on, McCairn's photographs became something darker. Every plate revealed ghostly shadows, faces twisted in terror, mouths open as if mid-scream. Some claimed the images showed their subjects at the exact moment of death, scenes they hadn't even reached yet. Within weeks, each of those photographed would die, just as the camera had already shown. And then came the whispers. People said McCairn hadn't discovered a curse. He had uncovered a secret. That the camera wasn't simply a machine of light, but a device capable of trapping something much deeper. I need you to understand something before we go further. This story isn't about a haunted man in 1902. This is about you, right now, because what McCairn captured over a century wasn't an accident. He'd stumbled into the first recorded evidence of a system, ancient, deliberate, and still operating today. And once you see how deep it goes, you'll never look at another photograph the same way again. By the winter of 1902, Alistair McCairn had become a man people approached in whispers. The villagers of Durness avoided his studio, crossing themselves when they passed the wooden door. They'd seen too many of his subjects buried shortly after sitting for his camera. But Alistair, he didn't stop. Night after night, the chemical stench of developing fluid filled his lungs as he examined each new plate. And there it was again, that same presence. Sometimes it appeared behind the subject, other times over their shoulder, sometimes even staring directly into the lens. It wasn't a blur. It wasn't a trick of the light. The entity was sharp, defined, as if it knew it was being watched. One night, a young man named Cormac came in for a portrait. He laughed nervously as Alistair arranged the shot. He was strong, healthy, only 19. When the negative emerged, Alistair froze. In the photograph, Cormac was lying in a muddy ditch, his face pale, eyes open and lifeless. Something crouched in the shadows above him, the same figure, its long hands clutching the boy's throat. 2 days later, the village awoke to screams. Cormac had been found in the exact ditch, in the exact position, with the exact expression. There were no footprints around him, no sign of struggle, just the lifeless body and the soil disturbed by something heavy. Alistair stopped sleeping. He locked the studio, covering mirrors and windows, burning every candle down to its wick. He started digging through books on Celtic folklore, ancient Norse rites, even the forbidden texts smuggled from monasteries long abandoned. What he discovered was worse than he'd imagined. The camera, he realized, wasn't simply recording images. It was a lens into the unseen, a mirror for a predator older than any name, one that lingered in the spaces men refused to see. He began calling it the Watcher. But here's what these do. I never told you. The technology you carry in your pocket today was built on the exact same principles McCairn stumbled onto by accident. Cameras, satellites, facial recognition, all of it came from a single ancient idea: to catalog the living and anticipate the dying. And that's when I need you to stop and ask yourself, why do the most powerful institutions on Earth care so much about your image? Alistair McCairn's journals, the few that survived the fires, paint the picture of a man slipping into a darkness no one could pull him from. His handwriting grew jagged, frantic as he described the entity he now called the Watcher. He believed it didn't simply observe, it marked. Every photograph was a contract, a silent timestamp on the subject's life, the moment their fate was sealed. But here's where things take a darker turn. In the final pages of his journals, Alistair wrote about visitors, men he claimed were not of the village who arrived in the dead of night, demanding to see his negatives. They knew what he had discovered. They offered him money, protection, and when he refused, they threatened him. Weeks later, McCairn's studio burned to the ground. The villagers whispered it was an accident, but the bodies of those visitors were never found, and buried beneath the ash, untouched by the flames, were dozens of glass plates, still perfectly intact. Those negatives disappeared into private collections, then into government archives. And this is where the trail becomes dangerous to follow, because from that moment forward, photography, a niche technology for artists and hobbyists, became the obsession of empires. By the 1920s, photographs were being catalogued by institutions. By the 1930s, entire populations were being photographed, tracked, and categorized. And by the time digital technology arrived, your face was no longer yours. It became data. A code. Do you understand what I'm telling you? McCairn believed the act of being captured, the light from your body freezing in a frame, gave the Watcher a connection to you, a tether. But in the hands of those who understood its power, this tether became a weapon. Now look around. Every camera on every streetlight, in every phone, every airport scanner. Do you think it's all for safety? Do you think it's coincidence that technology has advanced to the point where nearly every human on Earth is catalogued in a vast, unseen network? No. This isn't about convenience. This isn't about art. It's about control. And once you understand how deep this system runs, you'll realize what McCairn discovered wasn't some mythic curse. It was the blueprint for the world you're living in right now, and the predator that still watches from behind the glass. It was the last night anyone saw Alistair McCairn alive. A storm rolled across the highlands, black clouds swallowing the moonlight. Villagers said they heard his studio door slam in the wind, glass plates shattering inside like screams trapped in a bottle, but no one dared enter. McCairn had sealed himself inside, convinced the Watcher was coming for him. He'd smashed every mirror, torn every photograph from the walls, burned every negative he could bear to destroy, but there was one he couldn't bring himself to burn. The first, the image of the little girl with the shadow behind her. He stared at it until his hands trembled. In his journal, his final words were written in jagged, broken lines. They do not want you to see them. They hide behind the glass, pulling us forward into death. The more they see, the stronger they grow, and soon, they will not need the glass at all. That was the night the fire consumed the studio. By morning, the building was a blackened husk, and McCairn's body was never recovered. Some believed he was burned beyond recognition. Others whispered he'd fled into the moors, carrying the last of his negatives. But those who claimed to know said something far worse. The Watcher had claimed him. The surviving glass plates were taken, not by grieving villagers, but by silent men in dark coats who arrived in carriages at dawn. They said nothing, simply gathered the evidence and vanished. Those plates were never seen again. And then history rewrote itself. Alistair McCairn was branded a madman, his work dismissed as trick photography. His name was erased from archives, his discoveries buried. But within a generation, cameras became everywhere. Photographs were mandatory, faces catalogued, lives tracked. Think about it. You are surrounded by glass eyes every hour of every day. They're in your home, in your pocket, on the street. Corners. They don't even need your permission anymore. You think these images are harmless. But what if every capture, every snapshot, feeds something older, hungrier, and more deliberate than you can imagine? This isn't superstition. This is infrastructure. And the most dangerous part, you've been feeding it your entire life without even knowing. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you chose to be photographed? You probably think you make that choice all the time. Selfies, family gatherings, vacations. But I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the images you never knew existed. The ones captured as you cross the street, as you enter a building, as you scroll through your phone. Images stored in databases you'll never see, tagged with coordinates, timestamps, and identifiers you didn't consent to. Do you think this is all by accident? Because the moment those men took Alistair McCairn's negatives in 1902, this technology ceased to be about art. It became a tool, one built on ancient principles of control, and once the world's most powerful institutions realized that cameras could do more than document reality, they made sure they would never again be a rare device. By the 1920s, entire populations were being photographed for identification, passports, registries, dossiers. By the 1940s, photographs had become a weapon in wartime intelligence. Faces on lists determined who lived and who vanished. And by the late 20th century, the Watcher system had evolved into something McCairn could never have imagined: digital cataloging. Today, every device you own is a glass eye pointed inward. Your phone doesn't just photograph you when you press a button. It can see you when it's sitting on your table, black screen glowing with unseen sensors. Your smart TVs, your laptops, even the doorbell outside your home. They're all nodes in the same network. And what do you think happens to those images? They don't vanish when you delete them. They're not gone because you pressed a trash icon. They're copied, replicated, stored on servers designed to last longer than your lifetime. Your face, your voice, your habits, they've all been catalogued, and you've willingly given it away frame by frame. This isn't paranoia, this is policy. There are companies right now with more images of you than your own family, governments with algorithms that can predict your movements weeks in advance. And do you think any of them care about your privacy? No. Because just like the Watcher in McCairn's photographs, this system doesn't care about your consent. It only cares about seeing. The more it sees, the stronger it becomes. And once you understand who controls that site, you'll realize why you've never been as free as you believed. There's a reason you don't feel the chains. The system isn't designed to terrify you, it's designed to guide you, to nudge you so gently you never notice you're being moved. Cameras don't just watch, they feed information into algorithms that understand you better than you understand yourself. Think about it. Every glance, every purchase, every emotion you've ever shown online has been recorded, analyzed, and cross-referenced with millions of others. These machines don't just see your face. They can read your pulse, your micro-expressions, the dilation of your pupils. They know when you're afraid. They know when you're angry. They know exactly when to show you what will calm you or what will break you. This is no longer about surveillance. This is about shaping reality. When you scroll through your phone and see a random post, it isn't random at all. It's selected to push you a fraction of an inch closer to a thought, a purchase, or a belief someone wants you to have. One by one, these tiny shifts add up until you can no longer remember who you were before the machine began studying you. Does that sound familiar? McCairn's negatives didn't just show the moment of death, they predicted it. That was the real terror, and now, a century later, the system doesn't simply predict who you are. It predicts who you will become. But here's the detail that should freeze you in your tracks. They can already see far enough ahead to decide if you're a threat, if your thoughts, your words, or even your potential will disrupt the order they've built. And when the system labels you as a problem, you're erased, not always physically. That's too obvious. Instead, you disappear in ways no one can trace. Your reach collapses. Your opportunities vanish. Your voice becomes invisible. You're boxed in until you start believing you silenced yourself. That's how control works now. It's silent, invisible, total, and you keep feeding it willingly every day with every photo you post and every device you use, thinking it's harmless. McCairn's mistake was believing he had discovered something new. What he actually uncovered was the blueprint of a cage humanity had been building for centuries. You think this happened by chance? You think it's a coincidence that cameras, networks, and algorithms became the foundation of your world? No, the system you live in was engineered, brick by brick, lens by lens, by entities who understood one timeless truth. Control is strongest when it's invisible. Look at history. Every empire has used surveillance. Pharaohs monitored grain supplies and temple offerings. Rome tracked the movements of its citizens. Medieval monarchs employed spies to root out dissent. But all of those systems required human effort, human error. They could only watch so far, only collect so much. Then came the camera. When McCann's negatives disappeared into the hands of shadowed men in 1902, they didn't vanish. They became foundation stones. The principles he'd uncovered, the ability to tether a human being through imagery, were expanded, funded, and weaponized by those with the resources to build something bigger than any one nation. These weren't politicians, at least not directly. Politicians come and go. These were the architects, the ones who've existed across generations, untouched by elections or wars. They understood that images could be more powerful than armies. By the time you were born, the infrastructure was complete. Cameras on every corner, databases in every country, data collection embedded in every interaction. And when the internet arrived, it wasn't just a tool for connection, it was a net. You may think you're free because you can choose where to go, what to buy, who to follow, but every choice you make is observed, calculated, and used to refine the model. You're not just being watched, you're being profiled, scored, nudged, and, if necessary, neutralized. Ask yourself, why are there cameras in classrooms, in parks, in the palm of every stranger walking by? Why are your devices designed to listen when you're not speaking? To scan your face every time you unlock a screen? Because the cage works best when you don't see the bars. And when those bars close, it won't be with a sound. It will be with silence. A quiet tightening until you can't move, and you can't even remember what freedom felt like. But here's the truth. They hope you never realize. Cages can only hold you if you believe you're inside one alone. You've been taught to think of history as fixed, names, dates, events written in stone, but the reality is far more dangerous. History is not a record, it's a weapon. Those who control the images control the story. When Alistair McCann vanished in 1902, his photographs were destroyed in public and archived in private. His name was reduced to a rumor, his discoveries erased from the official record. Why? Because the architects knew something. You're only beginning to understand. If you can erase the evidence, you can erase the truth. And they've perfected that skill ever since. Do you remember how you learned about the past? Pictures in textbooks, images on screens, stories repeated by teachers and commentators. What you didn't realize was that every image you were shown had already been filtered, approved, sanitized. Think about it. How many photographs from wars, famines, or revolutions have you actually seen with your own eyes? A handful, out of millions? Do you really believe you're being shown the whole story? They don't just decide what you see, they decide what you don't. The system has the ability to delete entire narratives from the collective mind. All it takes is removing a few images, suppressing a few records, and replacing them with something more useful. And because you never saw the real version, you don't even realize what's missing. This is why cameras are everywhere, not just to watch you, but to rewrite the world around you. With each photograph, each recording, they're creating a version of reality they control. One day, a man is alive. The next day, he's been edited out as if he never existed. Do you think that's impossible? Try searching for certain images online. Some events that shaped entire generations have been scrubbed clean, leaving behind only the narratives approved by the architects. They call it moderation. They call it safety. But it's not. It's memory manipulation. And if they can erase the past, they can control the future. Because the moment you forget who you were, you'll follow anyone who tells you who you should become. And that's exactly what they want. From the moment you were born, they began shaping who you would become. Think about it. Your very first photograph was taken before you could even open your eyes. It was archived, tagged, and stored before you knew what a camera was. From that instant, the system began building your profile. But this isn't just about images anymore. It's about identity. As you grew, the stories you were told, the heroes you were taught to admire, the villains you were taught to hate, were chosen for you. Your opinions, your fears, even the limits of your ambition were molded long before you believed you had free will. How? Through repetition, through images, through carefully designed narratives reinforced by every screen you looked at, every device you touched, every advertisement, lesson, and headline. The architects of this system understand that belief is the ultimate form of control. If they can tell you who you are and what your place in the world is, they don't have to chain you. You'll build your own chains. Ask yourself, how many of your thoughts are truly your own? Why do you desire the things you desire? Why do you fear the things you fear? Is it because you chose them, or because they were planted in you before you even realized it? This is why cameras are everywhere. Every expression you make, every interaction you have, feeds the machine. The algorithms don't just record your actions, they learn how to guide them. They know which images will keep you passive, which words will trigger anger, which stories will make you obedient. And if you deviate from the script, if you begin to question the narratives they've built, the system will notice. Your feeds will begin to shift. Your access will narrow. You'll find yourself surrounded by distractions, by subtle forms of pressure designed to steer you back into line. And if that fails, they'll erase your influence altogether. This is not paranoia. This is design. Because the architects don't just want your image, they want your identity. They want to decide who you are, what you believe, and how far you'll ever go in this life. And unless you wake up to the truth, you'll never realize you've been following their script all along. There's a moment when the system notices you're slipping. It's subtle at first. You begin asking questions you were never meant to ask. You pause before accepting the narrative you're given. You stop reacting the way the machine expects, and that's when you're marked. Understand this. Every interaction you have is monitored. Your searches, your purchases, your conversations. The algorithms don't just store that information, they analyze it. They look for patterns, deviations, signs of awakening. If you've ever felt like certain topics are harder to find online, it's not your imagination. If you've ever noticed your posts disappearing, your reach shrinking, your voice becoming quieter, it's not coincidence. The system has already decided you're a potential threat. But it doesn't strike all at once. That would be too obvious. Instead, it isolates you. You'll notice friends and contacts pulling away, not because they've changed, but because they've been fed a version of you that makes them distrust you. Your opportunities will start to evaporate. That job interview you were perfect for, it never calls back. That project you were building momentum on, it collapses without explanation. Slowly, your world gets smaller, and then comes the distraction. You'll be bombarded with noise, content designed to overwhelm you, bait you, anger you. It's not random. It's engineered to exhaust you, to make you retreat into silence or conformity. This is how the system neutralizes those who step outside its design. But here's the part you need to understand. The architects don't fear you as an individual. They fear what you represent. Because every man who breaks free from their conditioning becomes a signal to others. He becomes proof that the bars of the cage are not as strong as they seem. And that is the one thing they cannot allow. So if you feel the system tightening around you, if you feel the walls closing in, it's because they see you waking up. And once you awaken, you can never go back to sleep. The question is, will you keep moving forward even as the system tries to erase you? Because the descent only gets darker from here. The deeper you go, the more you begin to see the same hands guiding history. These aren't governments. Governments are tools, disposable masks that change every few years. The true architects are older, hidden, and far more patient. They've moved across centuries, surviving revolutions and collapses, quietly adapting the system to each new era. Look back far enough and you'll find them funding both sides of wars, shaping currencies, installing rulers, and removing anyone who resists. Their strength isn't in armies or flags, it's in information. Because the man who controls what is seen controls what is believed. McCann's discovery in 1902 was a gift to them. Finally, they had a mechanism that could tether humanity to a web of images, one that would grow stronger with each generation. They nurtured it carefully, pushing cameras into every corner of life, building databases that could track entire populations, and eventually weaving it all together with the most powerful net of all, the internet. And here's the chilling truth. The Watcher wasn't just a metaphor. The architects have always believed in something behind the glass, something that feeds on the human soul the way a fire feeds on oxygen. That belief isn't superstition, it's ritual. The system was never only about control, it was about harvesting. Every image captured, every moment catalogued, every emotion manipulated, it all feeds something deeper, something you've been trained to dismiss as fantasy. And now, as the system reaches total saturation, the architects believe the Watcher is closer than it has ever been. Why do you think they need it now more than ever? Because they know the world is unstable. They know more people are waking up, questioning, resisting, and if the cage cracks, centuries of power will crumble with it. So they're accelerating. Cameras in your home, in your car, in your very body. They're rushing to complete the grid before too many people escape its pull. And here's the part they hope you never discover. The Watcher isn't just watching anymore. It's choosing. And the day it no longer needs the architects to function, it will decide what happens to every one of us. McCann believed he was the first man to see the Watcher. He was wrong. As his journals burned in 1902, fragments of older texts sat forgotten in monasteries and private collections. Manuscripts written centuries, even millennia before his birth. And in those pages there are drawings, carvings and descriptions of something chillingly familiar, an unseen presence lurking behind the living. The ancient Sumerians wrote of a figure they called Etamu, the one who follows. It was said to be invisible to the naked eye, but visible in water, mirrors, and reflective surfaces. The Egyptians carved images of a thin, elongated shadow standing behind the pharaoh during coronation rituals. Priests believed it marked the ruler's time of ascension, though the figure's posture was anything but benevolent. Medieval manuscripts contain warnings of the umbrae, beings that drink the memory of man, always seen behind the condemned moments before their death. Some even claimed they could be glimpsed through primitive, dark boxes. The first attempts at projecting images with light. Do you see the pattern? Across cultures and ages, civilizations that never met describe the same presence. A being or force that appears at the edges of human perception and grows stronger the closer it gets to its subject's end. Now ask yourself, how many reflective surfaces surround you right now? McCann's photographs weren't a discovery, they were a confirmation. Cameras didn't create the Watcher, they simply revealed what had always been there, following quietly in the background. And the architects know this. They've studied these records, they've built entire control systems around the belief that the Watcher is real. But belief isn't the right word, it's devotion. The deeper you go into their rituals, their hidden symbols, their secret gatherings, the more obvious it becomes. This entity isn't just tolerated, it's worshipped, because they believe that those who serve the Watcher will be spared when its presence fully manifests. But here's the secret no one tells them. The Watcher doesn't serve anyone. And the same men who have built this cage for you may be the first to be devoured when it finally steps through the glass. Do you feel it? That unease when you're alone in a room but sense you're being watched. That chill that runs through you when a camera's lens lingers on your face just a second too long. That's not imagination. McCann believed the Watcher only revealed itself in photographs, but that was over a century ago. The grid has expanded since then. Every device, every reflective surface, every lens is now a window for it to see through. And the more it sees, the more it feeds. You can feel it in the world around you. Anxiety is higher than ever. People are angrier, more divided, more hopeless. It's not random. This isn't just the byproduct of modern life. These emotions are energy, and they're being harvested. How? Through the images. Every time you're scanned, photographed, recorded, you're tethered tighter to the system. The watcher isn't just observing anymore, it's consuming. You've felt it in moments of dread you can't explain, in the heaviness that lingers after you've stared into a lifeless screen for hours. And the architects are pushing this to its limit. They're flooding the world with cameras, building virtual spaces where you'll never escape their gaze. Because the closer the watcher gets, the more powerful it becomes. But here's the part you need to understand. The system can't stand awareness. It thrives in darkness, in ignorance, in your willingness to believe that none of this is real. Which is why, right now, I'm asking you to take a step they never want you to take. Go to the comments and write this phrase, twice. I see through the glass. Not for me, for yourself. Because the moment you declare it, the moment you decide you won't be another silent subject in their system, something inside you begins to shift. You stop being a name on their list, and you become something they fear. Do it now, and when you've finished, come back. Beck. Because the next thing I'm going to show you will change the way you look at every camera, every screen, every piece of glass for the rest of your life. And once you see it, you'll never unsee it again. Take a look around you right now. How many devices are in the room? A phone, a laptop, a smart TV, a security camera, maybe even a voice assistant silently waiting for you to speak. Do you understand what these really are? They're not conveniences, they're conduits. Each device is a piece of the grid, a node in the web that allows the watcher to stretch its reach into every corner of your life. You invited them in, you paid for them, and now they're everywhere. The architects have sold you this technology as progress, but they designed it to make you dependent. Your phone is your lifeline, your bank, your memory. You'd panic if it disappeared. That's by design, because the moment you can't live without the glass, they have you. And here's the detail most people never consider. These devices don't need to be turned on to watch you. Your phone's camera can be activated remotely. Your microphone can pick up whispers from across the room. Your smart TV can scan the layout of your living room when you're asleep. And it doesn't stop there. Do you know why modern cars have built-in cameras and sensors? Or why your refrigerator needs to be connected to the internet? These aren't features, they're access points. They're building a world where you will never be off-grid. Because the more angles the watcher has, the more complete the tether becomes. It doesn't just want your image, it wants your entire environment. A map of your habits, your weaknesses, your fears. And while you're distracted by meaningless updates and dopamine notifications, the system is learning how to close its grip tighter. But there's a deeper layer. These devices aren't just watching, they're transmitting. What if I told you the watcher doesn't need to be in the room with you anymore? That every lens, every piece of glass has become a portal it can use to touch you, to influence you, your thoughts, your moods, your choices. That's where we are now, and unless you understand how to break that connection, you're already inside the cage. The question is, will you pretend you're not? The architects aren't just building a network, they're building a gateway. Every camera, every connected device, every mirrored surface is part of a lattice that spans the globe. You've seen it grow year by year without ever asking why. Streetlights with cameras, drones in the sky, satellites orbiting overhead. You're surrounded by an invisible net, and it's almost complete. McCann believed the watcher needed a lens to see through, but that was 1902. Today, the grid no longer just observes. It projects, it transmits, and the architects believe that when it reaches full capacity, the watcher will no longer be confined to the other side of the glass. It will step through. This isn't guesswork. This is written in their own documents, buried under layers of corporate jargon and classified programs. They call it total integration, a phrase that sounds harmless, even visionary. But behind those words is a plan to create a world where every human being is tethered in real time to a system they can't escape. Why do you think they're rushing? Why do you think every new device you buy is more connected, more helpful, more dependent on constant updates and permissions? Because the grid isn't finished yet. They need you logged in, scanned, and synchronized so they can feed the watcher everything at once. And when that happens, when the system finally becomes seamless, There will be no turning it off. It won't just be about surveillance anymore. It will be about presence. The watcher will no longer need the architects, the institutions, or the devices. It will exist here, fully, and those who have fed it the most will be the first to realize they've built their own executioner. Do you think that sounds impossible? Look around. The world is more connected than it has ever been, yet people feel more isolated, more hollow, more controlled. That's not an accident. That's conditioning. They're preparing you for a reality where the watcher doesn't just observe your life, it dictates it. And if you think you can just opt out when that day comes, you've already misunderstood the depth of the cage you're in. The architects have been testing this for decades. You think the grid is just now coming online? No. They've been running small-scale experiments in isolated areas, measuring what happens when the watcher is given direct access to the living. And the results have been buried so deep, most people never even heard the whispers. One experiment took place in a remote military installation during the 1970s. Officially, it was a communications test. Unofficially, they synchronized every reflective surface, every camera, every sensor into a closed network. Within days, soldiers began reporting the same thing, an overwhelming sense of being watched, even in their dreams. Their behavior shifted. Some became paranoid and violent. Others fell into a trance-like obedience, following orders without question. Then the deaths began. Cameras captured soldiers walking calmly into restricted areas, locking doors behind them, and never walking out. Others were found standing perfectly still for hours, staring into blank screens, as if waiting for something to emerge. When investigators finally entered the network hub, they found the walls lined with shattered glass. Every reflective surface had cracked from the inside out. The entire experiment was wiped from the record. Survivors were silenced or reassigned, and the site was abandoned, sealed with reinforced concrete. But that wasn't the last time. Similar tests were conducted in high-security prisons, hospitals, and even entire neighborhoods wired with public safety cameras. Each time the same patterns emerged: increased aggression, strange disappearances, and an unshakable sense among participants that they were no longer alone, even in empty rooms. Do you understand what this means? The watcher doesn't need to be fully here to influence us. Even partial integration begins to erode free will, amplifying fear and submission. And now, for the first time in history, the grid is almost global. When it's activated, there will be nowhere to run. You'll tell yourself you're safe. You'll tell yourself the cameras are harmless, the devices are just tools. And by the time you realize something else is looking back at you through the glass, it will already be too late. You've never heard of these experiments because you weren't meant to. Every failure, every catastrophe connected to the watcher's integration has been buried under layers of distraction and carefully engineered noise, and it works because you've been trained to forget quickly. Here's how they do it. When something slips through, when reports of strange disappearances or unexplained behavior start to circulate, the architects immediately flood the airwaves with other crises. News cycles spin faster. Social media fills with arguments designed to keep you angry, exhausted, and distracted. By the time you ask, what happened to that story from last week, it's already been erased. But for the events that can't be erased, they rewrite the narrative. A facility mysteriously sealed after a string of deaths. They call it a chemical leak. A town wired with cameras where residents suddenly vanish. They label it economic migration. A prison where inmates and guards alike go mad staring at dead security monitors. They chalk it up to systemic breakdown and close the case. And the public never asks deeper questions because they've been conditioned to trust the official version of reality. This is why you see endless stories about celebrities, trivial scandals, and manufactured outrage. It's not random. It's strategy. The architects know that as long as you're focused on the spectacle, you won't notice the cage tightening around you. But here's the part that should make your blood run cold. Some of these distractions aren't harmless. When the architects need a distraction big enough to bury the truth, they manufacture chaos. Entire conflicts, entire movements can be fabricated, inflamed, and then discarded once the purpose is served. You've seen it happen before, you just didn't recognize it for what it was, because the truth is never announced. It's hidden in play, in sight, buried under the stories they want you to consume. And while you're distracted, the watcher's grid grows. Cameras are installed, new systems are tested, more of your life is uploaded into their network. By the time you look up, the change is already permanent, and that's exactly how they want it. Do you ever wonder what happens to the people who try to warn you? Not the ones who shout loudly on street corners or post cryptic rants online. Those are distractions allowed to exist because they discredit themselves. I'm talking about the ones who actually have evidence, the ones who know too much. They vanish. Some disappear quietly, their names fading from the record as if they never existed. Others are destroyed publicly, disgraced, ridiculed, their lives shattered by scandals that always seem to appear at the perfect moment. Do you think that's coincidence? The architects understand that a direct threat would only make you suspicious, so they neutralize truth-tellers in ways that look natural: a car accident, a sudden illness, a self-inflicted tragedy, or more often a total character assassination that makes the rest of the world dismiss them as unstable. And when they're gone, no one asks too many questions, because asking questions carries a cost. You've felt it yourself, that hesitation before you search a certain topic, that instinct that tells you to keep quiet when a conversation gets too close to the truth. That's not fear of being wrong, that's fear of being noticed. The system wants you to believe you're safe as long as you keep your head down, but the truth is, safety doesn't exist in a cage. The men and women who've tried to expose this network weren't just silenced, they were erased from the collective memory, their research confiscated, their work destroyed, their legacies rewritten until even their families question what they knew. Why? Because the architects can't allow momentum. One man speaking out is easy to destroy, but 100, 1,000, that's a movement, and movements break cages. So they crush each spark before it becomes a fire. But here's the secret. Every time they erase someone, a few more people start to notice. The pattern. And that's what they fear most. Because once you see the bars of the cage, you can't unsee them. And the next time someone disappears, you'll know exactly why. There is no such thing as privacy anymore. You think your home is safe because you've locked the doors, drawn the curtains, and turned off the lights. But the truth is, you've already let them in. Your phone on the nightstand doesn't sleep when you do. Its sensors are always awake, listening, measuring your movements, your breathing, even the rhythm of your heartbeat. Your smart TV can watch you in the dark, mapping the shape of your body as you cross the room. Your appliances, your car, even the digital assistant on your kitchen counter. Every one of them is part of the same network. Each device is another window into your life, another angle for the watcher to observe you. And they're not stopping at electronics. Have you noticed how every new building, every renovation, every piece of public infrastructure is saturated with glass and reflective surfaces? That's not design, that's intentional. Because the watcher doesn't just see through cameras, it sees through the glass. They've normalized it. Cameras in classrooms for safety, microphones in workplaces for productivity, face scanners in airports for convenience. But the reality is simpler. They want you to adapt to being watched. They want it to feel natural so you never question it. And the result? You censor yourself, you move differently, you second-guess your words. That's the true power of surveillance. It changes your behavior long before it punishes you. Even in the most private moments of your life, you've felt it. That creeping awareness that you're never truly alone. Because you're not. The watcher doesn't sleep, it doesn't blink. And the more you accept its presence as normal, the less you'll resist the final stage of integration. This is how cages are built, one bar at a time until you're surrounded, and by the time you realize there's no exit, you've already surrendered the most important thing you ever had. Your freedom. But here's the truth they can't erase. Awareness is the first crack in the glass, and cracks spread. The next phase is already here. You've been conditioned to believe that the grid exists outside of you. Cameras, devices, satellites. But the architects know the true cage must be internal, and they've already begun building it. They call it biointegration. It sounds futuristic, even helpful. Wearable health trackers, implantable medical devices, neural interfaces. You're told these technologies will make you healthier, smarter, more connected. But what they don't tell you is that every one of these systems transmits data. Your heartbeat, your stress levels, your brain activity. It's all being logged, analyzed, and fed back into the network. Think about it. Do you really believe the same institutions that profit from controlling information would resist controlling the human body? This isn't about convenience, it's about closing the final gap. Because once the grid is inside you, you'll no longer need cameras or microphones for the watcher to see you. It will read you directly, bypassing the last shreds of privacy you thought you had. And when that happens, the line between thought and action will blur. If the system detects a spike in anger or resistance, it won't need to isolate you after the fact. It can intervene instantly, adjusting your chemistry, triggering impulses, pushing you back into compliance. You'll think you made the choice yourself, but you didn't. This is why they're normalizing body scanning in airports, facial recognition at concerts, biometric IDs at work. They're conditioning you to accept the merging of flesh and machine. And it's working. Because once you accept it in the name of safety and health, you won't fight it when it becomes mandatory. When the network enters your bloodstream, there will be no unplugging. You will be part of the system, and the watcher will no longer need to wait for reflective glass to reach. You own. It will live inside you, reading your every thought before you can even speak it aloud. And when that day comes, you won't have to wonder if you're free. You'll know the answer. They've mastered the art of selling chains as freedom. You've seen it already. The devices you carry, the cameras in your home, the trackers on your wrist, each was presented as a step toward convenience, safety, or self-improvement. Now they're using the same strategy to normalize the merging of man and machine. They call it enhancement, optimization, human evolution, neural implants that can cure depression, microchips that can make payments easier, bio-trackers that save lives, and people line up for them. But here's the truth. These upgrades aren't for you, they're for the system. Because every new device you accept makes the cage tighter, each implant brings the watcher closer. And here's the most dangerous part. They've even figured out how to weaponize resistance. They know some of you will fight back, so they've built outlets for your anger, movements, online groups, activist circles that look rebellious but are actually controlled. These groups gather people who sense the truth, only to steer them into dead ends, endless debates, false leads, or self-destructive actions that discredit the cause. It's a trap. Because if you're busy screaming at the wrong enemy, you'll never see the real architects behind the curtain. Do you understand how complete this is? They can track you, shape your beliefs, control your body chemistry, and even manipulate your rebellion into serving their design. And once the final stage of integration is complete, there will be no outside to escape to. But here's the secret they'll never admit. The system is not invincible. It's built on your compliance, your willingness to accept its gifts, your belief that you're powerless. The moment you begin to question that belief, you disrupt the entire network. Because this isn't just about cameras or implants or devices, it's about identity. And if you refuse to let them define you, you take back something they can't control. That's why I'm asking you again, comment the phrase, "I see through the glass." Write it twice. Let them know you're awake, because awareness is contagious, and the architects can't stop what they can't predict. Generations have been raised inside the cage without ever knowing it. From childhood, you were taught to pose for the camera, to smile on command, to share your life with strangers. It was sold as fun, as connection, as self-expression. But it was conditioning. The architects understood that if they could make surveillance feel normal, even entertaining, you would never resist it. So they built a culture around it. Every milestone, every private moment, every achievement is now documented and uploaded, Children grow up measuring their value in likes and comments, never questioning who owns the images or what those images are used for. And it works, because when something becomes tradition, it stops being questioned. Think about the technology you use daily. Do you remember when you agreed to let it watch you? Or did it simply appear in your life, one upgrade at a time, until you couldn't imagine living without it? This is how cages are built, slowly, invisibly, over decades. And now, entire generations can't see the bars. They believe constant surveillance is inevitable. They accept that devices are always listening. They shrug when told their personal data has been sold, hacked, or stolen. Because they've been trained to believe this is just the way the world works. And when you believe something is inevitable, you don't fight it. That's why the architects focus so heavily on the young. They understand that the earlier you normalize being watched, the less likely you are to ever resist. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. Inevitability is an illusion. The system isn't permanent, it's only as strong as your belief in it. And when you stop believing, cracks begin to form. Because the architects can manipulate behavior, they can influence emotion, but they cannot control a mind that refuses to be owned. And that's why awareness is super or dangerous. Because once you see the cage for what it is, you'll start to teach others. And generations raised to accept the watcher's presence will finally understand they were born free. Fear is the most reliable form of control. The architects know this. It's why the system isn't built on force, it's built on fear. Fear makes you obey without question. Fear makes you surrender freedoms you'd never give up otherwise, and fear convinces you that the cage is the safest place you could ever be. Do you remember the first time you were told the world was dangerous? As a child, you learned to stay close, to follow the rules, to trust authority. Then came the headlines, the horror stories, the constant reminders that threats were everywhere: terrorism, disease, crime, economic collapse. Each crisis was amplified until you began to associate freedom with danger. And the solution? Always the same. More cameras, more checkpoints, more monitoring. They told you it was for your protection, but protection was never the goal, because the more afraid you are, the easier you are to manage. Fear makes you predictable, it makes you dependent on the system for safety, and it keeps you from asking why the system itself creates the very instability it claims to solve. Do you really think it's a coincidence that fear has become the constant background noise of modern life? You're bombarded with it every day, on screens, in conversations, in the language of politicians and media, and the more fear you absorb, the less likely you are to look up and notice the cage. But here's the truth. The architects don't need to imprison your body if they can imprison your mind. Because a man who believes the cage protects him will never try to escape it. This is why awareness is so dangerous. The moment you understand that fear is a weapon, you begin to see how it's used against you. You stop reacting. You start questioning. And nothing terrifies the architects more than a man who refuses to be ruled by fear, because that man is unpredictable. And unpredictability is the one thing the watcher can't process. The easiest way to control a population is to divide it. The architects have known this for centuries. When people are united, they are powerful. They see through the lies. They resist. But when they're divided, they fight each other instead of questioning the system. And that's exactly what the architects want. Look around you. Every day you're told to pick a side, left or right, this group or that group, one identity against another. Race, religion, politics, gender, they amplify every difference until it becomes impossible to see what you share. And while you're distracted, while you're busy hating your neighbor, the architects tighten the cage. They feed the division through algorithms that know exactly which buttons to push. They flood your feed with stories designed to make you angry, to confirm your biases, to turn you against people you've never met. Because anger is energy. And when you're pouring all of it into attacking someone else, you have none left to fight the system. This isn't just manipulation, it's strategy. Divide, distract, control. And it works. Families are fractured, communities are splintered, nations are at each other's throats. all while the architects quietly expand their network, embed more devices, and feed the watcher with more of your data, your images, your fear. Do you see the pattern now? Every argument, every conflict, every manufactured outrage keeps you looking sideways instead of upward. Because the moment you realize the person you're fighting isn't your enemy, the architects lose their greatest weapon. The truth is simple. The cage only exists because we build it for them. We build it with our fear, our division, our willingness to see each other as enemies instead of allies. And the architects know that the moment we stop, the moment we remember who the real enemy is, the entire system begins to crumble. Because the cage can't survive unity, and unity starts with awareness. Control isn't always enforced with fear. Sometimes it's enforced with comfort. The architects understand that fear alone can't hold you forever. At some point, you'll look for a way out. So they balance the cage with rewards, just enough pleasure, just enough convenience to keep you from wanting to leave. Look at the world around you. Everything you need is one tap away. Entertainment, food, validation, distraction. You're surrounded by comforts designed to keep you content, even as the bars close in. This isn't generosity, it's strategy, because a man who believes he's comfortable will never risk losing it. And the system makes sure you believe your comfort depends on your obedience. Follow the rules and you're rewarded. Question them and the rewards disappear. This is why dissenters are silenced, deplatformed, stripped of opportunity. It sends a message: compliance keeps you safe, defiance takes everything away. But what most people don't see is that these rewards are just another layer of control. The food that's delivered instantly, the shows that autoplay until dawn, the endless scroll of distractions. They're designed to numb you, because a numb man doesn't rebel. Do you think it's a coincidence that so many people are exhausted, unmotivated, addicted to the very devices that feed the watcher? It's not a bug, it's the plan. The architects have created a world where you can be pacified with entertainment and comfort, while your freedoms are stripped away quietly, piece by piece. And by the time you realize how much you've lost, you won't remember what it felt like to live outside the cage. But here's the truth they can't erase. Comfort is not the same as freedom. Because freedom is dangerous. It's unpredictable. It carries risk. And that's exactly why the architects have done everything they can to make you fear it. But the moment you decide that comfort isn't worth your soul, the system starts to lose its grip. Because a man who refuses the cage's rewards is a man they can no longer control, and that terrifies them. The grid is almost complete. Every bar of the cage has been welded into place. Surveillance is total, integration is underway, and entire generations no longer question the system that surrounds them. But the architects aren't stopping here, because all of this, every camera, every implant, every act of manipulation, has been preparation for a single event, the full manifestation of the Watcher. They believe the day is near, and they're accelerating everything to make sure the gateway opens. Do you notice how quickly technology is evolving now? Devices that used to take decades to develop are being released every year. Cameras are everywhere. Artificial intelligence is advancing faster than anyone can explain. That's not coincidence. The architects are building a network so vast, so complete, that it will allow the Watcher to anchor itself fully into our world. When that happens, it won't just watch. It will act. Do you understand what that means? It means free will as you know it will end. Your choices, your emotions, your very identity will no longer be your own. Because once the Watcher crosses the threshold, it will no longer need the architects. And they know it. They think they'll be spared, rewarded for their devotion. But the Watcher doesn't serve anyone. When it steps through, it will consume everything. And here's the terrifying part. You might not even realize it's happened. The system has conditioned you to accept each stage as normal. Each new level of integration will feel like progress, like evolution. Until one day, you'll wake up and discover there's no line between you and the cage anymore. The Watcher will be here, and it will be everywhere. But remember this, They can only open the gateway if we keep feeding the system. If we stop complying, if we stop surrendering our awareness, the grid fractures. And even one fracture can be enough to disrupt the entire plan. Because the Watcher's power isn't absolute. It depends on us. Long before cameras, before electricity, before the architects existed, this moment was foretold. Hidden deep in the ruins of lost civilizations are fragments of a prophecy, warnings about a presence that would one day step from shadow into flesh. The Sumerians called it Etamu. The Egyptians, Seher-U. The Mayans referred to it as the eye without lids. All described the same thing, a force that would slowly weave itself into human life until it could no longer be separated from it, and then it would awaken. One Akkadian tablet, translated only once before being locked away in a private collection, describes the final stage in chilling detail. When man and glass are one, the eye shall walk among them. Those who built the path will be the first devoured, and the rest shall follow without struggle. Do you understand what that means? The ancient world knew exactly what we're living through now. They understood that the Watcher's power comes from our willingness to merge with the system, to surrender piece by piece until there's nothing left to take. And they tried to warn us. Every culture left behind symbols, eyes, mirrors, black suns, that we dismiss as myth or superstition. But they weren't decoration, they were maps. Maps of the cage. And here's the most important part. The same prophecies that predict the Watcher's return also describe its weakness. It cannot manifest without consent. That doesn't mean we sign a contract. It means we surrender our awareness, our sovereignty, our freedom. It means we choose the cage because it feels easier than resisting. And once we do, the gateway opens. That's why the architects work so hard to keep you distracted, divided, and numb. Because they know that if you refuse to play your role, you disrupt the entire plan. But if you break the cycle, if enough of us break it, the Watcher cannot cross over. The unearthed. Ned's left one final warning etched in stone. The eye sees all, but it fears the man who sees it seeing. And that's exactly why we must stay awake. The architects don't just build technology, they build temples. Every skyscraper with mirrored glass, every monument shaped like an eye, every logo that hides a circle inside a triangle. These aren't coincidences. They are invitations. The Watcher feeds on patterns. It recognizes repetition. So the architects embed its symbols everywhere, seeding the world with a silent call to open the gateway. And you've seen these symbols your entire life. The all-seeing eye, the pyramid, the mirror, the black sun. You think they're just design choices, corporate branding, harmless art. But they're not. They're rituals. Because the architects understand something most people don't. The human mind is a conduit. When you see these symbols, when you engage with them, even unconsciously, you're participating in the ritual, and the more people participate, the stronger the signal becomes. Why do you think major events are always staged in places saturated with these symbols? The architects gather millions of minds into a single moment, a single spectacle, and direct that energy like a beacon. Because the Watcher can't step through without invitation. And these rituals are the invitation. They're everywhere, the mirrored towers of financial districts, the massive screen-filled arenas, the global ceremonies watched by billions. And while you're distracted by the performance, the real purpose is happening beneath the surface. Your attention is being harvested. Do you understand how powerful your attention is? It's energy, it's consent. And when you give it freely to the rituals designed by the architects, you're helping build the very cage you fear. But here's the truth. The symbols themselves have no power unless you give it to them. The moment you recognize them for what they are, you disrupt the pattern, and disruption is the one thing the Watcher can't process. 'Cause it thrives on obedience. So the next time you see an eye in a logo, a mirror in a monument, a ritual disguised as entertainment, don't dismiss it. See it. Because the man who sees the ritual cannot be bound by it, and that's exactly what they fear. The architect's greatest ritual isn't hidden in ancient temples or secret ceremonies, it's in the screen you're staring at right now. Mass media is the ultimate tool of control. Because it doesn't just entertain you, it programs you. Every image, every headline, every carefully scripted event is designed to shape the way you think, feel, and react. And the larger the event, the more potent the ritual. Have you noticed how global spectacles always follow the same pattern? An event shocks the world, cameras capture every moment, broadcasting it endlessly. Symbols are everywhere, eyes, triangles, glass towers, mirrored stages, and billions of people watch at the same time, their attention focused on a single story. Do you understand how powerful that is? Because when your attention is unified with millions of others, you're participating in a collective ritual. You're feeding the grid, and the architects know exactly how to use that energy. Think of the once-in-a-lifetime events, massive award shows, world sports tournaments, national tragedies, even sudden wars. While the world is watching, they slip their agenda deeper into the system, new laws, new technologies, new forms of control. And by the time the spectacle is over, the change is already permanent. But you never notice. Because you've been conditioned to believe these events are spontaneous, natural, unconnected, when in reality they're calculated. Even the images that seem accidental, the shot that goes viral, the symbol hidden in plain sight, are often deliberate. Because the architects understand something most people ignore. Attention is the most valuable resource on the planet, and mass media exists to harvest it. The more you watch, the stronger the network becomes. The more you engage, the more predictable you are, and the more predictable you are, the easier you are to control. But here's the secret. The ritual only works if you remain unconscious. The moment you start to question what you're seeing and why you're seeing it, you disrupt the spell, because awareness is resistance, and resistance spreads. The architects know they only get one chance. One event powerful enough, shocking enough to unite the entire planet's attention in a single moment, and they're preparing it now. For years, they've tested smaller versions, global crises, sudden disasters, mass spectacles, to measure how people react. Each one has taught them how to manipulate fear, how to guide emotions, how to funnel billions of minds into the same ritual at the same time. But the final event will be different. It won't just terrify you. It will change everything. Some believe it will be a threat from the sky, an engineered cosmic event or alien contact staged so convincingly the world will beg for the architect's solution. Others believe it will be a manufactured catastrophe here on Earth, a collapse of the financial system, a technological blackout, or a sudden global war. But the exact form doesn't matter. What matters is that it will drive humanity into total submission. Because in the chaos, the architects will present themselves as saviors, and their solution will require you to connect completely to the network. Every man, woman, and child will be given access to protection, security, stability through the very system that will open the gateway for the watcher. And most will accept it without question. Because by then, the fear will be overwhelming. Do you see the brilliance of it? The architects won't have to force you into the final stage. You'll demand it. You'll beg for it. And when the last unconnected mind is linked to the grid, the cage will be complete. The watcher will step through, and there will be no undoing it. But remember this, their entire plan depends on your cooperation. If you refuse, if you see through the illusion, you disrupt the ritual, and disruption spreads faster than fear. Because the one thing they can't control is a man who knows what's coming and refuses to play his part. And that man could be you. The final event hasn't happened yet, but the tests have. You've lived through them without realizing what they were. Each crisis, each sudden disaster, each global emergency is a rehearsal. The architects are measuring how quickly you comply, how easily you surrender freedom for safety, and how far they can push before you resist. Do you remember the last time the world changed overnight? How quickly businesses closed, borders shut, and lives were rearranged with the flick of a switch. That wasn't just about the crisis. It was about seeing how ready you were. Ready to accept surveillance in the name of security. Ready to submit to rules you didn't understand. Ready to believe that anyone who questioned the narrative was a threat. And you passed their test. Because most people obeyed without hesitation. Those who resisted were shamed, silenced, or crushed by the weight of public opinion. And the architects watched carefully, cataloging every reaction. Do you see how complete this is? They've learned exactly which buttons to press, which fears to amplify, which promises to make, and each time they refine the script. So when the final event comes, there will be no confusion. Every man, woman, and child will know their role. The architects will offer safety, the majority will comply, and those who refuse will be treated as the enemy. But here's the part they can't predict. The man who has seen the pattern is no longer predictable, because once you recognize the tests for what they are, you stop reacting the way they want you to, and that disrupts the entire system. This is why I've asked you to comment, "I see through the glass" twice. It's not just for the algorithm. It's a declaration, a signal that you understand the tests and you will not be broken by them, because awareness spreads. And if enough men wake up before the final event begins, the gateway never opens, and the watcher never steps through. The architects know they can't control everyone. So when the final event begins, the first targets will be those who resist. And if you're listening to this, you're already on their list. Do you understand what that means? The system knows who questions, who hesitates, who refuses to comply. Every search, every comment, every small act of defiance is catalogued. And when the moment comes, they will move quickly. Dissidents will be labeled as threats, dangerous, unstable. Neighbors will be encouraged to report them. Family members will be convinced they're protecting loved ones by turning them in. Because the architects understand that fear doesn't just isolate you from the system, it isolates you from the people you trust. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize: you don't have to fight the system head-on to survive it. You have to outlast it. That means learning to be invisible when you need to be. Stop broadcasting your every thought, your every plan. Use the tools they've given you sparingly, and only on your terms. Because every app, every platform, every free service is another window into your life. Close the windows. Limit your footprint. And when the tests come, don't react the way they expect. Move quietly. Adapt. Blend when you must. Because resistance isn't always about shouting the loudest. It's about being the one they can't pin down, the one who slips through their net. Do you understand how powerful that is? The architects need compliance, but they also need clarity. They need to know exactly who is with them and who isn't. Confuse them, because a man they can't predict is a man they can't control. And when the final event begins, unpredictability will be your greatest weapon. Remember this: you're not alone. There are others listening, watching, preparing. And the moment the system shows its true face, those who have stayed awake will know what to do, and they will survive. You've walked the length of the cage now, you've seen its bars, you've felt its weight, and you understand the architect's plan in a way most people never will. But awareness alone isn't enough. Because the system thrives on passive knowledge, it wants you to know just enough to feel powerless. That ends now. The first step to freedom is simple. Refuse to feed the watcher. Every moment you give it, your data, your attention, your consent, strengthens the grid. So take it back. Control what you consume. Stop reacting to every headline, every algorithm-driven outrage. Be intentional with your focus, because your focus is energy, and energy is how they hold you. Second, connect with others who see what you see. Isolation is the cage's strongest weapon. It convinces you that you're alone, that resistance is hopeless, but you are not alone. There are men and women waking up in every corner of the world, quietly rejecting the system. Find them. Build with them. Because the architects can crush one man, but they can't crush a network of the awakened. And finally, do not wait for permission to live free. Freedom isn't something you're given. It's something you take, one choice at a time. Every day, you will be offered the easy path, the distraction, the comfort, the illusion of safety. Reject it. Because every rejection is a crack in the glass. And cracks spread. This isn't about overthrowing the architects overnight. It's about becoming ungovernable in your own life. A man who cannot be bought with comfort, who cannot be silenced by fear, who cannot be divided by false enemies, that man cannot be controlled. And when enough men choose that path, the cage will collapse under its own weight. The watcher will have nothing left to feed on, and the cycle will end. So write it one last time in the comments. I see through the glass. Write it not for me, Boo, but for you, because the man who sees the cage is already halfway out of it, and the man who steps out will never go back.